All right. So in the previous section, I kind of noticed that this might not be the best way of looking for something by its ID. Because first of all, our section or our objects are defined using a name and some blah 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 and perhaps an ID, right? So one is we could transform this into a loop, and then the moment we find something, we store it, right? So we can have that, and let's call it item search. It will be undefined because it's hoisted up there. And what we'll do is we will let's use a long form type of loop. So var I equals 0, I less than the item store.items.length, and then we'll increment it like that. You can use a for each loop if you want, or you can use a third-party functional functional JavaScript like underscore or its other friend, Lodash. And what we'll do is we'll test to see if the item store dot items of I matches the ID, and we'll of course enforce it. So when it is found, we will type item search equals that very item. So let's duplicate this code here, paste it here. Okay, and I mean that's it. You return from here or you kind of skip. So for us, we should just break from here, and we will use the item search under here. So item search, otherwise it becomes item search. So this becomes deprecated, and let's quickly test our get response. So there's no item with an ID of 0. How about an ID of 1? So what could be the problem? I've adjusted the code and I've set our item search to undefined, just for a little bit of paranoia. And I'm going to add the dot operator here to access ID, because that was the problem. So let's try that. So it returns that. When we try 0 or an ID that doesn't logically exist, we get that. And when you try 1,000, we should get that. Right. So that fixes our issue here. And let's carry on. Let's do a bit of cleaning. So delete. Any guesses? If you guessed delete, you're correct. So we can do delete like that in a similar approach as above. And it takes in a request. Let's use the shorthand that you'll see a lot in many tutorials and blogs. Rec and res. Rec is short for request, res is short for response. So first step is we get the ID. We get the ID, parse, int, request, params, ID. Then we'll do our item search like before. If you can refactor this into its own function. Then we'll do our usual looping. I less than item store items length I plus plus, and the moment we find the item, by its ID, we set the item to item search. So we get our item store dot items and I, because we found it, and we break out of that. And we still kind of need this little fella here, so I'm just going to, for purposes of speeding up, just going to copy this thing here, and then I'm just gonna paste it here. All right, and one, the item is not found. So how do we delete items? So we delete them by splicing them out. So if an item actually exists, we shall quickly splice it out here, and let's get it. So item search dot items, and so we get this item and we splice it at its particular index. And one way of finding that index is we should ideally store another variable here, maybe var index, and perhaps set it to like -1. That doesn't exist. So what will happen is we go in here, index, and set it to the I. All right, well, this might probably be deprecated because it will be a bit useless. And in here, we should go in the items and we will splice that ID or that index, and we're only get out the first item here. But first, just for a little bit of paranoia, we need to make sure that our index is always greater than or equal to 0 before we can do that. And yeah, otherwise we respond with an error like, invalid index or something like that. Index. All right, so let's quickly test it out. Let's go in here, let's try to delete the 0th item, change this to delete, and yeah, it's nothing, I believe, so keep that. All right, so response, my bad. Problem with changing naming conventions is you get a bit screwed up later on, so let's change this to res again. Sorry about that. Res, and yeah, just double checking, nothing. Alrighty, so let's send the data again. Yeah, item not found, so we can't find the 0th item, so let's try to change that. So it says item not found. And why is that? So one, because item search hasn't been shown, so let's just put it back. Send, cannot read, splicing undefined. So we're actually supposed to be splicing from the store. And when we try that again, there it is. But we have no way of knowing that something has been removed. So what we shall do is we shall log the length and of the item store before, and then log the length of the item after. Let's change this to after. All right, and that refreshes, and when we try to do a send of delete, we should see, length was 3 before, now after that it was 3. Thank you, and I hope you should be able to adjust these things as your exercise, figure out how to do an update, and so on. Thank you.